Gary Hulsey, a Vietnam vet, has been to hell and back.
You had about as intense an experience a young man, a teenager, can have.
True.
You had to kill a man with your bare hands.
At one point, yes.
Hulsey was 17 years old when he joined the Marines, a kid. 3 tours, and more than 3 years later, he came home battered, bruised, but determined to leave the past behind. He finished college, started his own contracting business, but Vietnam wasn't done with him.
How much did you drink?
I'd go through a 5th of whiskey a day.
And why did you drink so much?
So I could pass out at night without having to have nightmares.
8 years after Hulsey returned from Vietnam, just 3 weeks after getting married, he was drinking heavily on the night of October 24th, 1978. He did the unthinkable.
I passed out around, last I remember, it was about 10 o'clock. When I woke up, she was in bed next to me, and the knife I kept under my pillow. The knife never jams, never runs out of ammo. I always kept a combat knife under my pillow. I was stuck in her chest, so I called the authorities. And
What did you tell him?
I said, I just think I just killed my wife. I don't know.
He pleaded insanity and served 9 years for second-degree murder. Hulsey's experience is extreme but familiar. More than 1 million veterans have returned from Iraq and Afghanistan. Nearly 20% of returning service members may suffer post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. As much as 25% depression. One study indicated 27% of returning Iraq vets abused alcohol. Another showed prescription and illegal drug addiction as high as 35% among some soldiers. When Gary Hulsey killed his wife in 1978, PTSD wasn't even an official clinical diagnosis. In fact, he didn't even seek treatment for PTSD until 1994. One of the most difficult problems, diagnosing PTSD. The vets themselves have to recognize the symptoms and be willing to ask for help. One way the military is trying to reach vets, video games that present real-life dilemmas where doctors can identify problems based on their score.
Another way is with programs developed for your mobile phone. The T2 Center at Fort Lewis McChord has developed a mood tracker so that service members can punch in a range of emotions and feelings in real time. Everything from depression to feelings of tiredness or hopelessness. Over time, the data helps define the possibility of stress-related problems.
Tools that didn't exist in Gary Hulsey's day.
War is hell. Hell is defined as being separated from God. God doesn't walk around the war zone.
Despite the hell, Hulsey has turned his life around. In 2007, he became an elected official, a city councilman in Pacific Washington. When the local press heard
a killer on the city council,
Hulsey was forced to confront his past again as his murder conviction became widely known. Married 25 years now, he credits his wife Lois for helping him understand something he never thought he would.
When I came home from Vietnam, I knew fear, I knew anger. I didn't know how to deal with love or joy or happiness. I knew guilt. And guilt and fear would turn into anger. That was familiar. Now I know joy, I know love.
Hulsey says when his secret went public, the response was something he didn't expect. Hundreds of letters from his constituents urging him to stay at the city council.
So that goes to show we've had this problem here in our society for quite a while. I mean, he didn't even realize as to the shooter there in Sutherland Springs and why we're having this crisis, and when I had attested to this 2012 Department of Veterans Affairs suicide report when 22 men were taking their own lives every day. This is happening in our society, and if we don't find that quelling as far as trying to create the stabilization center on what we're going to go into Houston to speak and look at why these men were, being put on these psychotropics for PTSD needs to be addressed, because we have this crisis not just with our veterans, and even let me just watch this piece here.
Welcome to the Advised Show, media with the common sense approach. So in Baton Rouge a few days ago, we had 3 police officers that were killed by another shooter that went on a suicide mission. Now, this is the second shooter that has been linked to the military, no criminal record. No one knows what happened to this guy. But the only difference with the shooter in this one is that he made videos and posted them to YouTube. Well, let's go ahead and roll the clip.
Just before 9 a.m. this morning, officers exchanged gunfire with a suspect less than a mile from police headquarters. Authorities say officers were responding to a 911 call after witnesses saw a man acting suspiciously. He was dressed in all black and carrying a rifle. Once officers confronted the suspect, he started shooting. 6 officers were shot, 3 were killed, and 3 wounded.
Shot fire, officer down! Shot fire, officer down!
Calls into 911 captured the terrifying scene.
Shots fired, officer down behind the building. Unknown where the subject shooting from.
Baton Rouge Police Chief Carl Dabadie.
Killed in the line of duty. One is 41 years old and has just under a year of service. The other is 32 years old with 10 years of service.
Police say the suspect is Gavin Eugene Long. He is a 29-year-old black man from Missouri. He was killed at the scene. Long, who is an ex-Marine, is thought to have been the only gunman. Police with heavy arms guarded area hospitals where the wounded officers were treated.
Public safety remains our priority, and we will continue to do our job in the light of what's happened.
Tensions between the police and the Baton Rouge community have been high ever since the shooting death of Alton Sterling at the hands of 2 Baton Rouge police officers. His death and that of Philando Castile, a Minnesota man killed by a cop during a traffic stop, has led to weeks of protests against police brutality across the country. 10 days ago, a gunman in Dallas shot and killed 5 police officers during a Black Lives Matter march.
He also was a veteran, and for him to do what we had done there with our first responder here, Mr. Moreno, losing his life and knowing that these veterans are, in fear of even losing their benefits. But we have a lot of them as far as the 500,000 that were given bad conduct discharges, and this is why I'm really trying to push forward on getting the governor or somebody to meet with our Veterans for Education Reform with our case study showing that if we don't find a way to curtail this or find a way to get these men back on a path to continue their services, we're facing last week, I think it was last week, they were getting ready to cut veteran benefits for veteran homelessness. We're already having to deal with the reassessment of saying there's not a post-traumatic stress disorder, but there is. And that disorder was even what happened there in Dallas, and they used a bomb. Let me let you watch this.
Back now from Dallas, where police ended the deadly siege on the city last night by using a robot with a bomb to kill the ambush suspect. It's a tactic straight from America's wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. As NBC's Tom Costello reports, it appears to be the first time police have ever used a robot bomb on U.S. soil.
With 5 officers dead, 14 people injured, and unable to get a clean shot, Dallas police turned to overseas battlefield tactics to take out the gunman, using a robot to deliver, then detonate an explosive.
Other options would have exposed our officers to grave danger.
In recent years, SWAT teams have come to rely on robots, sent in with cameras to locate a gunman, to inspect suspicious bags, even detonate explosives. Now, for the first time, delivering and detonating a bomb. Scott Reitz spent 30 years with the LAPD, 10 years on SWAT.
I think it was very unusual. I think it was very innovative, and I think they made the correct decision. You have to contain the individual, you have to neutralize them.
But delivering a bomb was not in the original intent. Robots have been around for decades, but the battles in Iraq and Afghanistan necessitated a far more robust and capable product. Now, bomb squads and police departments around the country are using this technology every day. Outside of Washington, the Montgomery County, Maryland Bomb Squad has a small fleet of remotely operated robots.
This is our largest robot. It's basically a front-end loader.
From very big to very small, equipped with cameras, microphones, climbing tracks, claws, whatever's needed.
Anything a human can do, we think our robotics are capable of doing. They have different kinds of clasps and things that they can pick up. We can pick up a small beaker of unstable chemicals, let's say, or we can pick up a big box or open a car door.
And in Dallas, to take out a cop killer. The question for SWAT teams nationwide tonight is whether Dallas marks a watershed moment in police tactics.
apparently unprecedented decision by police in Dallas to take the shooter out using a robot. So let's bring in ABC's crime and terror analyst, Brad Garrett. Brad's also a former FBI agent. Brad, good morning. Police in Dallas said they made this decision because, quote, other options would have exposed our officers to great danger. So do you support the use of a robot in this case?
Yes, and the reason why, Dan, is that I don't think they could eliminate that he had explosives. Obviously, he was lethal. He had already killed a number of officers. So what are your options? Send a SWAT team in, maybe get one of them hurt, or send a robot in, knowing you're going to have to ultimately kill him anyway.
But why not simply wait him out? At some point, he's going to need to sleep or eat or something like that. Why not wait him out for a couple more hours? This is the argument that some are advancing this morning.
Of course, they did wait him out for 5 hours, and I think reached a point where this is not going to get any better, and so we're going to have to end this. Because, you know, the issue is going to be he's apparently in a parking garage. Could he shoot somebody else? And the answer is probably yes.
Some people this morning are worried about the precedent this decision may set, about the militarization of our police departments, about the blurring of the line between policing and warfare, and about the fact that the argument goes the further you remove officers from the use of lethal force, the easier it may become. So do you share any of those concerns?
I only share that it's used in situations like this. Clearly, Dan, in any terrorist or extremist takeover situation where the person's not going to come out and it's clear that you're going to have to go in and get them, why not at least use a device where no one else is going to get hurt?
They used a bomb on this young man when he was isolated, and I'm a veteran. When you have your target isolated, that means he's not a threat. But they couldn't wait him out, or why they chose not to wait him out, I'm not real sure. But when you start militarizing our society with these men coming back, first responders are working with restorative justice and the 21st Century Policing Task Force reviews and the final reports coming in, showing that first responders are veterans also. And that militarizing is happening to our society. And when you start taking the liberties away from veterans that have already given so much, you know, even what the young man had said at the beginning, and, you know, what we're looking at that's happening here in our society, and, you know, even attending what they're doing with this, community Q&A on the violence that we're living with and trying to be on point of matter here. You can't have a system that's creating violence that's not looking at where that violence is coming from. As far as 2016, the report closer to home showed that all 5 of those cities had the highest rate of homicide. Those are facts. And they're young men and women that we're watching here in our city in San Antonio that they don't have a reentry program similar to what we did with Commissioner Tommy Atkinson on the pre-entry for veterans, and now there's a veterans court, a felony court. And when I did the hearing last week there to try to do the reviews on the financing of what we need to look at as these best practices, I didn't hear these best practices addressing the domestic violence, addressing the family violence. I mean, we're having veterans doing this, but we're looking at the upswing throughout the nation on what's happening with, you know, not just these veterans, but, you know, the domestic violence that's real. You know, these kids are not functional. And here's a young man that I want you to understand or try to bring you an explanation. Let you listen to what he had said.
Teenage murder suspect is willing to make a deal with Bexar County prosecutors this morning.
In a jailhouse interview, Julian Martinez says he'd make the step, but the district attorney's office would have to make a bigger one to close the case of Amanda Acosta. Martinez spoke exclusively with Marvin Hurst. Marvin, what kind of deal does he want?
Well, Barry, I can tell you it's the kind of deal that any prosecutor in the world would unlikely meet. But, you know, anything's possible. As a matter of fact, I'll let Julian Martinez tell you the lofty details of his proposition.
This is my life on the line. It's like fighting for your life.
Julian Martinez feels like he's guilty until proven innocent in the murder of Amanda Acosta. He's accused of killing the 17-year-old after a gang-related fight at a party on March 14th. She reportedly was the unintended target of his gunfire. The real target, Raven Moreno, who Martinez knocked out at the party.
I didn't shoot at them, and even if I were to, it wouldn't be at the car. Like, if I was going towards Raven, I would have made sure to get him right then and there. Why not? I already know it's all eyes on me, so why would I shoot at Raven with a whole bunch of cars around me to where everybody could see me? Or why would I even shoot at him, and like, why would I even shoot at him, period, when he's already, like, done? Like I said, I don't pray on the week, and I'm very aware that there was other people in the car, innocent bystanders, so I'm not that heartless. I'm not that cold-blooded that everybody seems to make me try to be, like.
During our jailhouse interview, we showed Martinez a screen grab of a male in a white shirt from the party.
I mean, I can't deny it's not me because it's clearly me, you know what I'm saying?
We also spoke with him about cell phone video showing him in a gold SUV as outlined in his arrest warrant, plus the images of him and what appears to be a gun in his pants.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that. I've heard it from you, I've heard it from well, I only heard it from y'all too, but I haven't seen nothing. Like, I told the detective, if there's really a gun, let me see it.
A Bexar County grand jury indicted Martinez in the case in June. He's awaiting trial.
I know once you get indicted, that don't mean nothing. Like, you can still beat your case. Like, I know a few cases out there, they got indicted and they beat it. So I figured, like, if I didn't do nothing, what am I gonna worry about a piece of paper?
The teenage murder suspect has a consideration for prosecutors, even though no plea deal has been sent his way.
Would you consider taking a plea deal in this case rather than to go to trial?
Deferred probation. That's it. Deferred probation.
Deferred probation for a murder charge?
Yeah, it sounds crazy. I mean, I know it never happened. That's why I say that, because other than that, I'm not taking nothing. Why would I take something for something I didn't do?
And here he is asking that's what he feels he deserves because of the damage that's done to this kid. I haven't done as far as his case study, but the amount of case studies that I've done in San Antonio and looking at, you know, what my son endured and how the effects of these psychotropics cause these kids to snap the way that they do. I mean, I think I've showed you 3 or 4 different shows that, you know, this is something has to be awakened here. And if we're going to look at the judiciary, you know, John Cornyn did a bill, and it was called Senate Bill 2002, Mental Health and Safe Communities. And we took the study here, and I can send you the study, contact me. It was done by the Council of State Governments. It was called Closer to Home. They had that, and then including that on what Parmela was saying, you know, her crisis intervention training should be a national model, but yet we have a mental health crisis. 90% of the jails on the same thing they're not acknowledging in the jails today. I mean, just 2 months or 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, WOAI does a special report on insane inmates. And these are these young men that we keep saying, you can't keep using these psychotropic drugs to make our community safe, and the judge ruled. You have a ruling that's saying what you're doing with these drugs are making members not functional. And when you start losing these lives and we have to pray together, we need to start acknowledging why we're losing these lives. So, you know, they had a run for this young lady, and let's listen to what she had to say.
Hundreds of purple balloons float above Southside Lions Park, each one representing a victim of domestic violence. Men, women, and children up early on a Saturday morning to take part in the second annual Stop the Silence, End the Violence 5K Run Walk. Go! At the heart of this run is a 25-year-old woman named Christine Meza. On February 11th, 2011, she was gunned down in her own driveway by her estranged ex-boyfriend, who then took his own life. For Christine's family, this event means the world.
It's hard to put into words, honestly, but I can tell you that it just brings some peace and content within me, and I see it in my family as well, because Christine was such a beautiful person.
Experts say domestic violence is too common. The numbers are are staggering.
1 in 4, almost 1 in 3 in Bexar County. So it matters to all. It is a calling for everybody to be involved and to be aware. 1 in 3, 1 in 4, that means that we all at least know one person, if not ourselves.
In the case of Lillian Morales and her family, it was her sister who was killed after being in an abusive relationship for years.
She suffered a lot, and we're just trying to gather here to help raise some awareness for the other women, help them learn that there is help out there.
And there being what we need to really, and I've gone with Commissioner Tommy Calvert to speak with this matter on how we have to have these young men and women coming back into our society. And if we don't accept the wrong that we did, how are we going to get these to become prosperous members? I mean, we're showing the domestic violence, child abuse, all these kids. I mean, I was just over on Martin Street there by Stella's, and they're sleeping under the bridge, and this girl's pregnant, came out of the foster care system, was into prostitution, got pregnant, her boyfriend's trying to help her and her child, or his child, but there's not a resource for them because he's a felon. And we were trying to create the resource with our stabilization centers and processing them into the Eagle Eye stabilization with first responders, helping curtail this, what we're having here. The statistics are showing this domestic violence. These guys are getting out wanting to see their kids. They go in, get processed in, and this is the highest rate of that process. This recidivism was identified in that report, and it was 54% statewide. It's all 5 of the cities, like I said, had the highest rate of homicide, 2016. We can talk about what we're doing in the judicial, but Senator Cornyn changed the chronology on that bill, and he changed it to breaking the cycle of mental health in judicial. Cory Booker has the Mercy Act, and I had wrote the Texas version of the Mercy Act. Redemption is mine. These are children, and we have young men and women throughout the United States killing each other. And that's why Donald Trump probably did, and he was a no-show on this opioid task force. And we had said back in 2010, we did the PI approach there with Mr. Mata, we were doing the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative. This isn't going to have a good outcome. If we're having veterans doing this, what do you think the effects are on our children? And this is what that effect is if we don't find a way to get them re-entered, where they can get, reunite, to have their values, even to be able to raise their children. This is where the mistake's at in the judicial. You're trying to govern it, saying this is an order of law, but you're violating the law by not following the rules. And then you're using this to put them back in the system. This is where we're going to fail if we don't look at what we did wrong, except you use psychotropic drugs, and this is what's happening here. So I'm going to let you watch this.
Please, just leave me alone.
Why didn't you answer my text?
I'm at work.
I texted you like 15 times.
Leave me alone.
The judge has issued a temporary order of protection.
I didn't do anything.
Respondent, which is you, shall refrain from disorderly conduct, harassment in second degree.
You have anything sharp in your pockets that I need to know about? No.
Aggravated harassment in the second degree, sexual misconduct, stalking in the third degree, stalking in the fourth degree, criminal mischief.
Ma, I got arrested today. And you're gonna need an attorney, just so you know. Can you come to the courts tomorrow at 9 a.m. because that's when I'm getting arraigned?
Dugan, criminal contempt 2.
Hey, step up.
Counselor, your appearance for the record, please.
George Vrikos of Monasterio, 6780 Exeter, New York, New York.
Mr. Dugan, you're charged with criminal contempt in the second degree for violating an order of protection. Counselor, do you wish to be heard?
Your Honor, at this time, we would like to waive a public reading of the charges and enter a plea of not guilty.
Requesting a conference date?
Yes, Your Honor.
People on the matter of bail?
I rely on the courts, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Dugan, I'm going to release you on your own recognizance today. You score a 10, not really much of a flight risk. However, you come back before me again with an allegation of violating that order of protection, and your bail status could change significantly. Next date, please.
June 17th at DB1.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Your Honor.
I called you so many times last night, it's not even funny. You can't answer.
I don't have to.
I don't care how many times we've been over it. All right, you need to listen to me for a minute. I'm trying to fix things with you. So you're really just gonna let it end like that?
There's no other way.
There's always another way. We can try harder.
What's this? Told you to take everything out of your pockets.
You're under arrest for violating order of protection. I need you to come with me.
Right, turn around and sit down.
People, you wish to continue questioning the witness?
Yes, we do, Your Honor. Kelly, can you tell us what happened on January 23rd?
I was working like normal. Mike came in and I know he's not supposed to be there. He started talking to me. I asked him to leave. He wouldn't leave, so I ended up calling the police.
And can you tell us how that made you feel when he came to your work?
Very uncomfortable. I don't want to see him.
That's it, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Ricos, questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Ma'am, isn't it true you made up the allegations because Mike has a new girlfriend?
No, it's not.
This is not the first time you've made allegations against my client. In fact, you refused to come back to court in 2012. Isn't that true?
This is true, but that's because he told me he would stop.
Will the defendant please rise? Mr. Dugan, you've been found guilty of criminal contempt in the second degree, and I've had the opportunity to review your pre-sentence report. All I can say is that I am appalled. 2012, conviction, criminal contempt 2. Later, 2012, conviction, criminal contempt 2. 2013, conviction, criminal contempt 2. 2014, conviction, criminal contempt 2. Mr. Dugan, you are what I call a frequent flyer in this building. Therefore, based on everything that's before me, I'm going to sentence you to 1 year in the Suffolk County Jail.
Put your hands behind your back. Whoa, put your hands behind your back. Oh, this is fucking bullshit. Are you kidding me right now?
Watch your language, Mr. Dugan. This is still my courtroom.
This is ridiculous. You're sending me for a year?
1 year, Suffolk County Jail.
You hear that? Do you hear that? This is fucking bullshit, man. Hell no. Hell no.
So I pray that you guys can just, call the representatives and ask them, why are we having a system to make our community safe, use psychotropic drugs? This is to make our community safe. How can it be? So you have to call your reps. I want to thank you guys. You guys have a Merry Christmas and pray for the kids. Pray for my son. He's one of the kids that suffered this traumatizing and this, but God bless.
Yo sé que un día volverá.